Well, I can't say I care too much for the lighting, but I'm outside and it's morning. Hi, how are you? I hope you've been well. Today's the day. Today's the day we paint. And by paint, I mean we use dry pastels to create artwork in a book. I've been messing with the lighting for about 10 minutes and the sun decided to make an appearance. So no other lights that I have matter. The idea for today is I'm gonna take a body painting that I originally saw this image on canvas or on paper, and I decided to paint it on my body. I'll put a photo of it up here. And I'm going to recreate this or a version of this as best as I can, hopefully better, in dry pastels. The way that I saw this in my mind, it was a lot more dynamic and a lot more dark. I'll still use the same colors so we can get a glimpse of what it would have been. Let me just bask in the sunlight for a second, because we're expecting heavy rains for the rest of the week. But I will go make a coffee, I'll go set up my station, and I'll see you in there. I'm so excited for this. Bye! Okay, hi. We are going to be using Rembrant soft pastels today. I have had these for years and I haven't touched them because they're so pretty. Ugh, they're so pretty. But today we're going to go in with white, a pale yellow, a regular yellow, a pale brown, a black, and I've added brown to this lot, but we're not going to use that brown. So, let's begin with this brand new textbook. I bought these washi tapes, I have like 30 of them in different colors, and I bought them specifically for this job. Outlining the outsides of the page, give it a very crisp border when you're done with the artwork, and you'll see in the end how satisfying it is. So, probably the best purchase out of everything that I've ever gotten. Let's begin. Dry pastels are a very interesting medium. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting with the first layer. It's a very layered piece of work, but with a lot of artwork, you start with either the lightest layer and you build dark on top of it, or you start with the darkest and then you add highlights later. Dry pastels, I found, you can start in the middle. You can start in the middle, leave space for light, add dark, add more light, add more dark, add more middle, so I think that's why I love them so much. They're very forgiving and they're so much fun. So to begin this first layer, I've added that kind of light brown color and then the yellow color simultaneously. Not on top of, not underneath, but rather next to. And in circular motions using my fingers, I blend everything together. This creates the first part of the base. If you've been here before, seen my videos, specifically my body paints, you'll know that I love asymmetrical works. So I tried to keep this work much like the original where I've body painted on myself. I've tried to keep it as asymmetrical as I could while getting as much groundwork covered by these yellows as possible. And the colors that I start with, these shapes and fullness that I start with, changes, as you'll see now when I add the white. I've focused the white mainly in the middle now because I do know that I want clouds coming in from either side, and so the whitest parts of the image are going to stay in the middle. And adding it on top of the yellow, as you can see, it doesn't really tarnish any of it. It does add the crisp white where the white was left on the page, and it blends nicely into the yellow so I can create fluffy clouds in the background. I call them clouds because I've finished it and they are clouds and they look like clouds by the end. For now, it's just random shapes that kind of cascade from the outside in the clouds. The whiteness explodes in the center and then gets darker on the outer edges. And I keep changing my mind. I go back and forth between how much darkness, how much light, how much fullness that I want in this image. You'll see it, but that's why I love this medium. Because I am using my body painting as a reference, I realized that there are lighter bits near my shoulders and in my neck, so I do create that more of a whiteness from that right side of the image, and I blend it in with the yellows as I go on. Adding that light brown or dark yellow, whatever you want to call it, in to create a break, I guess, in the white, make it look like there are more clouds. Alright, let's go in with black now. Black is always scary when you go straight in with it over other colors because if you make a mistake with black, you can't erase it, right? Except that with dry pastels, you kind of can. And another reason why I love them so much is because black doesn't start off as black. Whether or not I add more white to it, it does come out as grey initially. I did add more white to it because I wanted to enhance that greyness. But I start off by blocking off that entire left side and the corners, which will be so satisfying in the end, but for now, this is where I have my starting point. The darkest parts will be around the edges and in the corners of this image. I couldn't do that with my body painting because, again, we're working on a different canvas with a different medium, but I chose to do it this way for this one. And it's really cool because while the blackness, like the deepest black of it, is in those corners, as I cascade outward, it does fade into more of a grey, which works with what I'm going for anyway, because that's how I see those clouds. And it's just a matter of going back in to deepen certain parts, leave certain parts untouched when you want them lighter, and then going back in later to lighten those parts on top of that. The way that I found easiest to apply dry pastels is sideways, as you've seen me do a couple times already. If you apply from the point, or I guess the circular point, the edges of it, it is pretty rough and it's harder to blend out. They are good for detail work, but I wanted fluffy, so I've been applying it sideways and buffing it out that way. This paintbrush I found in the house. I don't actually know where it's from, but it has very soft synthetic bristles and I've used it to create clouds. When I found that this was more effective and much easier than blending it with my finger, I got so excited and very carried away. I think the majority of time I spent on this artwork is just making clouds fluffy. And as you can see, it's sort of pushing the dust of the previous color around. It's not adding any more to it, it's just creating depth to the layers that I'm already creating. Because I'm used to drawing with graphites and pencils, I started making shapes, like cartoon cloud shapes, and I noticed it pretty early on how cartoony it looks and I stopped doing it. And I do what I was doing from the beginning, where I start from a dark point and I blend it out with that brush to make it fluffy. I try to stop creating those fake cloud shapes because I didn't really like the way that they looked. Clouds don't look like that. This little eraser is probably the most useful tool any artist can have in their arsenal. It picks up colors, it doesn't tear paper, and I've been able to erase that extra black pastel, like I told you, was reversible. And I've been able to add more yellow and create a bit more warmth to this part of the image. Do I get carried away here with the clouds? Yeah, doesn't matter. No, not in the slightest, I'll do it again. So, at this point, I've added more white on top of the right side of the clouds, and I wanted to do this because it did seem a bit like diagonal. You could see the different application strokes that I had done, and I didn't like that. So I tried to make the cloud shapes again just to kind of get rid of that, and I fixed it all later by adding more darkness and making it fluffier. But I just wanted to make that point that even though you've gone in with black, dry pastels are very forgiving. You can either erase with and go over with, or you can layer, and it still works out pretty well in the end. This is the point where I realized that it works better if I just work from darkness and cascade it outwards. So I start doing that to kind of masquerade those diagonal lines I was talking about and those fluffy fake cartoon cloud shapes that I was making before. And it works out pretty well when I'm done with it in the end. I also wanted to use this opportunity to darken that side of the page because the left half of the page is gonna be really crisp when I take off that tape. So I wanted to add a little more darkness to the right side of the page too. The bottom half of the image is something that I could not quite get right with the water-based body paints because they are more opaque and they're harder for me to blend. I couldn't make it look like it was foggy or misty near the wheat field, but with dry pastels, I absolutely can. So I go back in later, I just kind of created a base for it now. I go back in later and buff out that fog and it looks really, really cool. I also add more yellow in those light parts of the clouds because you would be able to see the sky through the clouds. It wouldn't just be white, it'd be pale yellow and then the grey on top of the white. So I tried to make that more full as well, to give it more depth. We love depth and dimension here. If you've never been here before, it's my favourite thing in the whole wide world. The spray that I'm using here, I will link it below. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. It is a finishing spray. I've sprayed it down with a light layer because I wanted to lock in whatever I did underneath so it doesn't, get muddled up and messy. Now we're moving on to detailed drawings. So I have a whole lot of pencils here by Pastel. We're only using black today because if you remember the body painting, we are silhouetting a scarecrow in this wheat field. I go out and space this out. I draw the T that the scarecrow is going to lay on, and I basically draw out an outline of his body and his coat and his hat. But as a graphite artist, I love details. So at some point I start going in with details and start shading and creating collars and stuff on his coat and hat. That's not necessary. This is a silhouette, and I got carried away. Okay, now for the coloring technique. In retrospect, I should have gone in with a black pen of sorts, but I don't have any, and the only black pens that I have are to write with, not to draw with, so we are going in with colored pencil. Now, cross-hatching in all different directions works best when you want to color in with pencils. It's not really smart to go in and darkly try to color everything in. It is going to ingrain the paper on the other side, it's going to ruin the artwork, it's going to give it different layers of consistency. You don't really want that. But I haven't done this in a while, so you can see those levels of inconsistency appear the way I do it as well. But it is the best way to color something in with colored pencils, because whatever you miss when you color it down, you will catch those missed opportunities when you color it left to right, when you color it diagonally, and so forth. And it's just a lot of layering with this as well. And because you're coloring lightly, it doesn't really ingrain the page, it doesn't damage the work, and it doesn't ruin it for the next page when you paint something else. It is a big process though. It was the longest process here, and I've cut quite a bit of it out because it just took so long. But I think that it's the best way to do it. Again, in retrospect, I would have used a pen had I had one. Okay, this might have been my favorite, if not one of the most satisfying things. With the water-based body paints, I could not do this technique. It's where you press pretty hard on the base of the line you're drawing and you flick it up and use momentum to create very, very cool lines. I do it when I draw eyelashes as well, it's really fun to do. I couldn't do it with the water-based body paints, but I was having a field day doing it here. No pun intended. So yeah, with this technique you're basically just using the pressure and the momentum from the base of the wheatgrass and flicking it upwards to wherever it goes. So however high you want to pull it, that's your choice, but by the end of that strand, the pencil is no longer touching the page. Going in now with the black dry pastel, what I'm doing here is that fog that I was talking about earlier, and if I didn't mention it, I'm creating fog. It's not something that I could do with the water-based body paints, but it's absolutely something I can do now because we did clouds. On top of adding fog and giving it that extra eeriness, it also adds that darkness to the bottom half of the page, which again, it's going to look so good and so crisp when I remove that tape. And it just makes it feel like everything's coming together. And now I add in some details. I go back in and make sure all of my dark edges are covered in dark, all of the dark yellow edges are covered in dark yellow, I add some more lighting, I add some more darkness, I add some more color, and I'm essentially trying to make everything with a purpose pop. whether that's darkness or lightness or details in pencil. And this is it, the most satisfying part of any artwork in my opinion. Look at these crisp as hell edges, oh my god. How do I even begin to express my excitement about this video? I did not expect it to turn out the way that it did, and I almost have no words for how proud I am that I actually did this. So in terms of like technical stuff, behind the scenes stuff, I am still working on the best setup. I'm gonna try something different for next video until I get something that I like, but for what I have, I did okay. I think I did okay. And I found myself, as soon as I finished it, which took about 2 hours, I thought it was gonna take much longer. As soon as I finished it, I was like, okay, let's paint the next one. But then I sat down and started editing, and and I'm just, like, I can't put into words how liberating it feels to finally bring art onto this channel, which sounds stupid because makeup is art, and I've tried to incorporate art into makeup, like with body painting and stuff. So with all of that being said, thank you for watching this video. I hope you loved it as much as I loved making it, and if you'd like to see more, consider subscribing. That's it for me today. Thank you again for watching. Oh my god, such a relief, so liberating. I'm finally doing this. I'm gonna show you the final product. Thank you for everything. I'll see you next time. Mwah.